Hey guys, hey guys, what's up? Hopefully you guys can hear me through that. Just making sure it's the blue snowball mic that they sell. But yeah, welcome to this live Yu-Gi-Oh discussion. I do apologize for any kind of lag that may go on and all that, but because of the fact of the internet. Let me test something here. Let me test something. Hold on. Hold on, guys. Okay, just making sure. But yeah, welcome to this Yu-Gi-Oh discussion. Well, we're going to. It's a live one since, like I said, I've been getting back into Yu-Gi-Oh lately. Just watched a little bit of Bonds Beyond Time again, or at least, I basically just watched it while I was eating lunch, eating one of those big cup of noodles, if you will. But yeah, I just wanted to come on here and talk about Yu-Gi-Oh for a moment, and mainly talk about the final season, which some people like Yu-Gi-Oh Everything and TGS Anime and a few others have touched upon. But also talk about the fact that, and again, Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything and TGS Anime kind of touched upon this, during some of the discussions and everything, as well as a few others. But let's take a look at Dawn of the Duel, shall we? Take a look at Dawn of the Duel, and I do apologize if the phone rings in about 7 minutes. That'll be my mom calling, letting me know she's getting off work and she's going to be heading back home in this direction within the span of an hour or so, or a little over an hour, unless they have some kind of training going on afterwards. But yeah, I just wanted to come on here and like I said, just talk about Dawn of the Duel, the final season, basically that portion of the final season. Now, before I do, I'll let you know that Super Chats, I put in the description as well. Super Chats are open. And if you want to join in the discussion and have me read maybe your thoughts on, the final season of Dawn of the Duel and what I'm going to talk about here, Super Chat me there with, the cheap, honestly, the cheapest I would go if you can't afford too much is like between $2 to $5. Two, three, four, five, whatever you can afford. That'd be greatly appreciated. Also, check me out at BW Rosa's Discussions at all your favorite audio podcast locations except for Pandora. I am close to 300 podcasts on there, and if you're listening to the podcast on various affiliates like Spotify, you can also get a video podcast option as well to watch the podcast instead of hear it, as well as the fact that if you're listening to the podcast on Anchor.fm, listener support is activated there. Also, you can check out my content at VENMO at BW Roses, as well as at patreon.com/BW Roses of $1, $3 tier support there. And I am considering still a $5 tier for Q&A down the line, but don't hold me to that just yet. But I'm strongly leaning right now in that direction, possibly for future consideration, but I'm not there just yet. I did try to do a super chat Q&A just recently, moments ago on a live stream. Didn't go exactly the way I planned, so hopefully maybe this will make up for it. If you want to, help me out here financially with the super chats, I'll read off, like I said, some of your thoughts and everything as far as the final season, Dawn of the Duel, is concerned. Now, speaking of Dawn of the Duel, this was pretty much promoted, even when, as far as I can remember, this was promoted heavily. This was promoted very heavily, if you will, on the WB and 4Kids, to the point that, it was being promoted even before they showed us the KC Grand Prix, the one that started out the final season. It was basically being promoted, above that, even though the KC Grand Prix was the first, half, if you will, of the final season. It was the first half, along with Capsule Monsters. Now, Capsule Monsters, believe it or not, they were they were released originally as, two full-length movies. Basically, all the episodes were put together, kind of trimmed down a little bit, dialogue changed a little bit, but they were basically all crammed together as separate movies. Capsule Monsters 1 and 2. And they were considered because they actually aired Capsule Monsters, from what I remember, after everything was done. They aired them as like lost episodes or something. So they did get on the air, but they happened after, from what I understand, after the entire final season was over, and they made them basically be lost episodes. Although chronologically, according to the even though according to basically the season 5 3-volume set, the season 5 3-volume set, Capsule Monsters actually preceded Grand Prix, and then we got well, actually, what it is that I think. Oh, okay. No, Capsule Monsters, came after Grand Prix, and what was interesting though is they didn't do that. They did not basically. They did not basically have Capsule Monsters after Grand Prix. Instead, they went right into Dawn of the Duel. But what they did instead is they said, okay, we're going to put Grand Prix, if you will. We're going to put Grand Prix, if you will, as its own thing. We're going to put it as its own thing, separate movies, full-length movies, if you will. And then we're going to release it onto television. And that's what they did. But ironically, after the KC Grand Prix, we went right into Dawn of the Duel, and we didn't sidetrack over to Capsule Monsters. And I think the reason for that is I kind of fixed this here. I think the reason for that basically. Like I said, I think the reason for that basically was due to the fact that even, just like I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything put it, because he was ranking some of the story arcs in the original series. He was ranking the story arcs, and even he said that there was a story arc that they did that interrupted Battle City, essentially split Battle City into 2 seasons, and that was the virtual arc / Noah arc, if you will. And a lot of people felt that wasn't really necessary. It's like that didn't need to be there whatsoever. And I think what happened is 4Kids and Funimation and the WB, they kind of learned the lesson, because even then in the 2000s, the internet was, growing, right? The internet was growing into what it is right now, and it's still kind of growing as we speak. Basically, hold on for a sec. Basically, like I said, the backlash that it got, obviously resonated, if you will, very strongly to whether, like, okay, we have this Capsule Monsters portion of the final season. What do we do? Where do we put it? Right. So they probably figured, well, you know what? We could promote it as 2 separate movies, if you will, which they did. And then we could place it onto onto the lineup after everything is done, like everything is history. And that's what they did. They waited basically till everything was done, everything that was the main focus of the basically was the main priority focus for them for the final season was done. Then they went into Capsule Monsters, and that's how it ended. They basically, I think what they did basically is they looked back at how they structured like the first season, saw how they kind of screwed up a little bit in the second season, and going into the third season. But I think they look back at the first season and they're like, wait a minute. We focused mainly on the Duelist Kingdom tournament and the situation with Pegasus and all that. And they realized that, and they probably realized and looked at the fact that, wait a minute. We saved the first trip to the virtual world, for afterwards, which they did. It was that was that first trip into the virtual world. And then basically after that you had the dungeon dice or whatever it was called, with what's his name, I can't think of his name right now. He became part of the gang. And and then afterwards they had the thing with Rebecca, right? They had the thing. No, actually it was the virtual arc, the virtual thing after Duelist Kingdom. Then it was the Rebecca deal. Then it was the diamond thing, or the dice thing, if you will. And they probably looked at how they structured that first season. And they're like, hey, maybe that's what we should do here. We should take what would normally be in right in the middle, like right before Dawn of the Duel, and they realized, hey, why don't we just save that for the end? Because that's basically like a new. Because what would be happening is they would be promoting a different way of dueling with the Capsule Monsters. So the best choice basically was to go in the direction of let's save it till everything is over and done with, which they did. Because one, like I said, they'd be interrupting things and introducing us to the Capsule Monsters and everything, if you will. And again, I think they looked back at what happened with season 2, realized, the structuring wasn't that good, and, decided to go, in a different direction as far as the final season is concerned. Now, speaking of the final season, let's be honest. Let's really be honest. We could say that Waking the Dragons was a dark season, and there's no doubt it was. Yeah, according to Dylan of Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, it was a filler season. It was a season that was not depicted or, adapted from the manga. Like, Dawn of the Duel was, or, Duelist Kingdom or Battle City to an extent. None of Waking the Dragons or even the virtual arc / Noah's Arc was adapted from a manga. They were all just original filler. And that's common. That is common when it comes to basically any kind of anime in Japan or animation around the world, series-wise or whatever. If they're based on a book and you're expecting them to adapt certain story arcs from that book, to be showcased, on their, in the series, in the anime, in the anime series or animated series, even though you're expecting that to happen, you have to realize that they need to do more than just continuously adapt story after story, because sometimes some of the stories, may not be adaptable and they need to go in a different direction. And obviously that's what Yu-Gi-Oh! Did. They went in a different direction to where they said, okay, the virtual arc, Noah's Arc, that's going to be a filler thing. In Waking the Dragons, that's going to be a filler thing. And they were. Waking the Dragons, I will give credit, was, like I said, dark. It was dark for what it was, especially even if it was filler. So there you go. They even said that the KC Grand Prix at the beginning of the final season was filler too. And I totally agree with that. I really do. Because of the fact that, like I said, when you look at something that's adapting itself, adapting some of its episodes, a majority of its episodes and storylines for said episodes, into animation form, from a book source, like let's say the manga of Yu-Gi-Oh! Or a manga for One Piece or whatever, there's just so much you could adapt before you realize, hey, we could adapt that, but this is like maybe a way too dark, maybe way too much would be edited or whatever. So they probably said, what if we came up with more filler? If you catch my drift. And that's what they did. They came up with filler. That's about it. They came up with some filler arcs. Some were good and some weren't. It all depends on personal preference. The way I look at it. It all depends on personal preference. Here's the thing. Here's the thing, though, about Dawn of the Duels. We finally got into that because, like I said, that was basically the most promoted and talked about, arc of the entire final season, hands down. Like I said, even before KC Grand Prix happened, it was being promoted over that. And I'll tell you, like I said, Waking the Dragons might have been dark. This outdid it. There's no doubt. This outdid it. I'll put it this way. It's like a movie series progressing in rating. Like with Harry Potter, most of the movies up until the final ones were PG and everything. But when we got to like some of the final Harry Potter movies, they progressed up. They progressed from PG into PG-13. There were some PG-13 movies that progressed right into R with their following sequels. There was some G-rated films that if they had follow-ups, they progressed into PG. So when you compare Waking the Dragons to the final season, especially the Dawn of the Duel part of the final season, you could say that Waking the Dragons was like PG-13. Well, Dawn of the Duel was straight up R, period. When you really think about it, straight up freaking R when you think about it, especially if you watch the original Japanese version. Now, thankfully, I have some of the original Japanese episodes on disc somewhere, I think in the garage or in here in the room somewhere. And I'll tell you when I first saw those episodes, whew, you can go online, and I said this in the live stream yesterday, you can go online and basically, look at all the comparison sites out there of Yu-Gi-Oh, as far as the Yu-Gi-Oh anime is concerned, for all the different incarnations. And when you look at the Dawn of the Duel comparison of the original, run in Japan compared to its 4Kids run here in the States, the comparison is like night and day. And, end of story. It's like night and day. There's no getting around it. That's how dark it gets. I mean, we all know that the reason they, 4Kids would edit in these, what is it? These auras, if you will, among people when they get basically, killed or, sent to the shadow realms or whatever. We know that the reason they put those auras around them is to edit out what is in the original version. And I can tell you, when you look at Dawn of the Duel, compare, the Dawn of the Duel version of the final season compared to its original Japanese version, it's like, holy crap. I mean, there's no getting around some of the things they had to censor. Like I said in the live stream yesterday, Zork's form, that snake appendage he had, like right here, was originally actually in another region of his body, if you catch my drift. I mean, even Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything and people that have talked about it have pointed that out. And they've even shown the differences. They've even come out and said, yeah, you see the big difference here? Yeah, this is where it was originally. This is where they put it. It's like It's like huge differences, if you know what I mean. But the one that really got a lot of people was, the change that they did of how, the change that they made, I should say, when it came to the origins, the creation origins, if you will, of the Millennium Item. I mean, whoa! I'll tell you, and what you look at, when you look at the original broadcast of it in Japan, of that episode, and you look at the 4Kids version, it's like they don't show you what happens. They don't even show you the silhouette of what happens. Like the Japanese one. They just straight up show you a bunch of people, a bunch of citizens being, captured by Egyptian Seto's father, Akhenaten, I think. Is that Yu-Gi-Oh's father? I can't think of it. Akhenaten, I can't think of his name right now. But basically, Egyptian Seto's father. You have basically, you just have in the 4Kids version, as far as I know, you just have them gathering up people, and that's it. You don't see the silhouette. You don't see the scene where young Bakura, the Egyptian version of Bakura, Thief Bakura, who would become Thief Bakura, you don't see that scene of him witnessing all these people, including his own family, I think, getting viciously, brutally murdered, and basically the blood and bones melted down to create the items. You don't see that. You don't see that whatsoever. What you see instead is just, like I said, the people being captured, and that's it. And the next thing I know, the next thing I think we all know and see is the Millennium Items being created, and that's it. As far as I know, that's how it went. Because again, this was here in the States. It was a Saturday morning cartoon. In Japan, it might have been the same thing, but but mostly I think at night. But yeah, this was mostly a Saturday morning cartoon here in the States. So you can't get away with much, if you know what I mean, when it comes to a Saturday morning cartoon. End of discussion. And just to let you guys know, those of you that are tuning in right now for this live stream, super chats are open. And if you want to have, you want to take part in this discussion, this talk that I have of the final season, super chat that in. It'd be greatly appreciated. $2 to $3, $4, $5. If you can only afford that, it'd be greatly appreciated, guys. And I thank you for that. And I thank you for that right now, because I'm still looking for work, and any financial help will be greatly appreciated. But like I said, getting back on topic here in the States, Yu-Gi-Oh was a Saturday morning cartoon, and that's it. It was a Saturday morning cartoon. In Japan, it might have been a Saturday morning cartoon or even a Saturday evening cartoon. Who knows? But the difference was night and day, because like I said, the creation origin of the Millennium Items, the way it's told here in the States and told, in Japan, big difference, big old difference. And I don't think anybody could see that. But I don't think anybody could deny that. The other thing too is, I think, you got a lot more. How do I put this? You got a lot more blood, if you will, in this final season. Yeah, we got some blood during the Battle City deal with, Merrick when he got possessed and everything and all that. We got blood there, if you will, in that flashback that was basically, as I said earlier, edited out with an aura, if you will, a yellow aura around the guy he kills. Thus indicating, he's going to the shadow realm, whatever. But that pales in comparison. Excuse me. That pales in comparison, ladies and gentlemen, to what we see in the final season. I mean, yeah, we got some in the Waking the Dragons as well. There's no doubt. But in the final season here, we got a lot more. We got a lot more because, one of the things they talked about that they kind of kept true between the two versions was when the monsters get summoned, those that summon the monsters have a connection with them, basically meaning if the monster gets destroyed or injured, the person that controls, that summoned them, has that connection with them, suffers that same pain. If you get what I'm saying, kind of like what we saw in the battle with Yami, Merrick, and Joey in Battle City. Basically you get that there, and you get it there in the ancient Egypt deal. And the reason I bring this up is because one of the ancestors of Yugi is an ancestor of Yugi's grandpa, and he ends up basically he's one of the, I think one of the first that, not one of the first, but he's one of the characters that gets killed off towards the end. He gets killed off towards the end, and we see him basically getting sent to the Shadow Realm in the dubbed version. But what we get in the Japanese version is not only does his monster, which is Exodia, get destroyed by Zork, but we see the reaction that happens, because all of a sudden in the Japanese version, he's clenching his chest like this or something, and he's doubling over and he's spitting out blood. And you don't see that in the dub version, but you definitely see that in the OG version. And he died, and that's how he dies. A lot of the deaths that happen, not just to the human characters, but the monsters in the Japanese version, they don't shy away from that. They don't. But in the American version, they tame it down. They tame it down to where, yeah, you'll see maybe a monster get, ripped in half, but again, they'll have that aura, that aura around them, that special effect aura around them, in the parts that where they're getting, in the places, I should say, where they're getting ripped apart. They'll have that aura, that glow of an aura around it, so you don't see, what was originally seen in the Japanese version. But I will say this. Straight up. And I mentioned this in the live stream yesterday as well. I was surprised, honest to God surprised, ladies and gentlemen, of what they were able to get away with in the 4Kids version. Honestly, I was. I mean, come on. The first episode of Dawn of the Duel, you have Yami Bakura, basically, as we find out later on, the Zork Bakura chasing after regular Bakura, and he chases him into a church. Now, we see that it's a church in the original Japanese version, but it's not in, and we kind of see it somewhat in the American version, but they don't indicate it as much, although it's plain as day when you see how the building is structured and everything, and the way you got the benches and everything, all set up. I mean, you could blur it out as much as you can. There was no hiding the fact that they gave us basically the church in there. They gave us the inside. They showed us the inside of a church, despite trying to blur out certain imagery and all that. It was plain as day that was a church that he went into. That was a church. That was a church. Period. And again, in the original Japan version, yeah, you could see it clear as day. And the scene's a little longer by a few seconds or so. But in the American version, even despite their best efforts, they can't blur it out completely to try to, make it undistinguishable to the viewer, because guess what? They'll still be able to tell what it is. They'll still be able to tell what it is. But again, this was one of those, because like I said, I saw what they were able to, edit it down with Waking the Dragons, Battle City, and all that. I saw what they edited down, what they changed and everything. And like I said, when you would buy the uncut DVDs that they put out, where the English VAs came back in and read off and recorded off a translated version of the Japanese script to give us English uncut versions of the Japanese episodes, I could see where some of the things they some of the things they had cut out to make it more cleaner and more acceptable. But but again, I'm just surprised about what they were able to get away with. What they were able to, keep in despite, their best efforts to make it less, to make it less, like its Japanese counterpart. I was totally surprised by it. I really was. I was really surprised by it as I turn on the light there. But I was really surprised. And and here's the thing too. This this season to me really proved without a shadow of a doubt that for a Saturday morning cartoon, whether it's a dubbed anime from Japan or an original animation here in the States, that it's fine to get as dark as you need to get. That you can get as dark as you need to basically, tell the story. If you need to get dark, you can get dark, and that's it. Get as dark as you need to tell the story. But again, when it comes to the dubs and everything between, both ends of the spectrum, the dub and the original, like I said, you're kind of surprised by what they're able to get away with. You're kind of surprised and taken aback of what they were able to keep in despite their best efforts to try to tone it down. And it just was a real surprise to see a lot of that. A real surprise. There's no doubt. I mean, again, take away the special effect auras around the characters when they die, you can pretty much tell that they're gonna die. You can pretty much see it, and that's what happens. That's what happens. One thing again that I think everybody will praise about the final season, though, especially about Dawn of the Duel. One thing people will actually praise about it is, even though we got the creation origins of the Millennium Items, which again, that was toned down completely. Well, not toned down completely, but toned down to the point that it's like, the full scale of it, there's no way you would be able to get away with it on Saturday mornings, period. But the fact that on both agendas, they were able to keep in the origins of how, Blue Eyes White Dragon came about, how Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl came about. I thought that was great. I thought that was really great. I thought the fact that Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl were based on actual people from Atem's life. So I really like that. And I like that Kasara was the inspiration for the Blue Eyes White Dragon. Basically, her spirit, bonding and becoming one with the Blue Eyes White Dragon. And apparently she also inspired another card that came out later on that basically has a depiction of her, in that on the card. So I like the fact that we got origins of some of the cards that would be created. Like how, Dark Magician was just a regular Dark Magician monster, and then the guy that originally controlled him bonded with him and became the Dark Magician. So again, I love the fact that we got more background on the characters, associated with some of the cards and the closeness, the bondness with them, period, especially throughout all of time. I really like that. I really did. And one thing that a lot of people really were happy about was finally, even though it took up to the final season here in the dub, you have Seto Kaiba finally acknowledge that, okay, fine, I get it, fine, Yugi, you and your friends, you were right. There is some kind of truth to this, bizarro-ness. Because you got to remember, for years, he didn't want to acknowledge whatsoever that what was going on was real. but until he actually experienced it himself. And there you go. But yeah, it's just whew. The dawn of the duel here in the U.S., like I said, was dark. Was probably the darkest I've seen any kind of anime dub on Saturday mornings. Be able to get away with. Period. But again, when you look at the Japanese version, you could see why they couldn't go all the way and why they were able to get away with what they could, surprisingly, over what they could have probably said, hey, we're just going to go all out and just let it be uncut, and that's it. Because if they would have gone with the uncut versions that we got from Japan, whew, that would really cause that would have caused a major backlash for the WB and for 4Kids and Funimation on all that, because they would be before allowing that kind of stuff on there. But yeah, it was pretty dark, man. It's pretty dark for what they were able to get away with, and that's the truth. That's the truth. One thing I am gonna say though, when we got to the ceremonial duel, the one that would, if Tim lost, would set him free, let him finally rest, if you know what I mean. When we get to ceremonial duel, not only do you have Kaiba finally see with his own eyes exactly what's been going on, be upset at the fact that the only reason he ever lost to Yugi was because of the fact that Atem, the pharaoh, was the one doing the dueling instead of Yugi. And then later on, noticing that maybe Yugi, didn't really need Atem, and Yugi was always exactly what people said he was. And that's, one of the best, ever to play the game, even accepting and calling him, much to Yugi's surprise and everybody else's surprise, that, actually acknowledging him as the king of games, once and for all. Basically, Seto humbling himself and saying he is the king. He is exactly who he says he is. And all because he noticed Yugi do the one thing that even when possessed by, Atem, he couldn't do, and that's take down, and not even Seto could do, and that's take down all Egyptian god cards, without, with, regular strategy or something like that. So that was a great moment. And Joey's reaction was like, like, oh my God, what did you just say? Because, Joey's basically like, am I hearing things or did Kyler just admit he was wrong? So I did like that. I did really like that. And of course, the ending, after Tim loses and he gets ready to go back, the emotion you get out of the characters, they don't want him to leave. And he's kind of emotional too, but they realize this has to happen because, he can't stay. He can't stay and remain in a world where basically, he doesn't have anything to do anymore. He is, he's accomplished his mission. He can finally rest. And what I liked about that is when he opens the spirit door, you see all his comrades, his friends from his days as Pharaoh, waiting for him, like saying, hey, welcome home, come on in. So that was a cool moment. But then another thing that really got me a little bit was, and this was seen in the third, and this was seen during Waking the Dragons, and then of course in the beginning with the KC Grand Prix, and then I guess we kind of see it a little bit with the ending here as well. But I kind of like the fact that, over time, even though, and like I said in a response video to Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything's talk on the scene breakdown between Akiza and Yusei in the final episode of 5Ds. Like I said, and like I kind of mentioned there, in Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything kind of talks about this as well. You could tell that something romantic happened between the two, but the reason they didn't want to focus on it that much is because this is a game that at the end of the day, it's an anime, it's a manga, that meant to sell a card game to young men and women, and they don't need any, romance to distract them from doing that, if you know what I mean. But again, getting back on point here, the one thing I liked about what we would get in Waking the Dragons, and then what we got in the KC Grand Prix, and even towards the end here, was the fact that you finally had Taya, waking up and realizing that she had feeling that her feelings for the Pharaoh, and by extension and later realization, um, fully, if you will, Yugi, that the feelings she had for them, like I said, that being a Tim, and then by extension Yugi, and then fully realizing it's Yugi, period. Realizing that her feelings for them was more than just friendship. That she had actually fallen in love with Yugi. She had fallen in love with a Tim, and through a Tim with Yugi. So basically her reactions to, Rebecca calling Yugi her boyfriend, Vivian acting the way she did towards Yugi in KC Grand Prix. And then we kind of get something at the end here as well. The reaction basically pretty much tells you, and I think they kind of give us a little bit of that in Dark Side of Dimensions too, where it's not jealousy or anything like that, but just, the way she acts, I think you could tell that she has fallen for Yugi, that she's in love with him, but they don't show it. They don't really explore it because, again, at the end of the day, this is meant to sell a card game, and that's it. Kind of like um, MLP here. If I could show you, MLP here, its show is meant to, the show here, if you will, is meant to sell toys, just like um, just like the Transformers '86 movie and any Transformers incarnation are meant to sell toys. I mean, they can have romance hinted in there, even between Autobots and Decepticons and humans, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, it's meant to sell toys. Just like this is at the end of the day, it's meant to sell a card game by Shonen Jump and Konami and all of them. But again, I like the fact that Taya realizes, because she even surprises herself, during the ceremonial duel, where she's thankful that Yugi's okay, from an attack by the Pharaoh, and she's all of a sudden she just realizes, oh my gosh, when did I start cheering for Yugi? It's like, where did that come from? And the reason she has that realization is because up till then her feelings for the Pharaoh were growing. Her feelings for the Pharaoh were growing into something more. And they even had a scene in Waking the Dragons where she's talking to Rebecca, on a helicopter, and they both basically acknowledge that they have feelings for the two different sides of Yugi. Like, Rebecca acknowledges, hey, I know you have feelings for a Tim, and Taya, in it by extension, is like, yeah, and I know you have feelings for Yugi. So yeah, it's one of those situations to where they'll acknowledge it, but they won't go any further. But you get those moments in between, that kind of really tell that story. So I'm glad at least they didn't shy away to an extent of Taya feeling the way she did, because she was the one that was the most emotional. Not saying everybody else wasn't tearing up and emotional, but she was the most emotional. It's almost like you would think, she was about to just run up to him, kiss him, and be like, I'm going with you. I'm going to go into the spirit world with you because I want to be with you, kind of deal. Da, da, da. It felt like that with her. It felt like she was going to run up, if you will, kiss him and saying, I'm going with you, and we're going to be together for all eternity. It felt like that, it felt like that could be what they were leaning towards, but they didn't. They didn't. So it's just one of those situations that when you get down to it, the execution for it was done as best as they could do it. It was done as best as they could do it. And that's it. That's about it. So yeah, the ceremonial duel I thought was good. I thought it was really good. But again, when you look at this final season, this Dawn of the Duel portion of the final season, it is like it is like nothing you've ever seen, both from the original Japanese version and even like I said, what they were surprisingly able to get away with in the 4Kids version. It was just crazy, just really crazy. When you really think about it, all the things they went through, not just to edit things down, edit scenes down, censor things, rearrange things, stuff like that. You know, it surprises you again that despite all those edits and everything, what they were able to do, what they were able to get the green light for. Well, when you look at the Japanese version, it's like they're not hiding anything. They just go straight forward. They just go straight forward. And one common complaint, I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, Dylan, that is, had about about the final season was the way some of the editing was done. Like you would go from a duel between Yugi and Yami Merrick who's possessing Tristan's body. You go from you would go almost to that at times, most of the time, and you would quickly go. Basically, it'd be like the transitions would be a little like too quick and too sudden, if you will. It'd be too quick, too sudden, and it's one of those situations that you could see what he's talking about, because it's like here you have this flashback and everything, or this RPG situation, whatever, with the Pharaoh back in the day, back in his time, or you have the situation with Aknamen or whatever his name is, getting ready to do this deed or whatever, and all of a sudden, just as he's about to do this one thing, or this certain thing's about to happen with the Pharaoh, suddenly it just cuts away to Yugi and his friends standing in the desert, wondering what their next, wondering what their next, what their next directive is, what their next, plan of strategy is, if you will. You have them meeting up with the girl that's the inspiration for Dark Magician Girl. You have them meeting up with the guy that basically people look at as a Dragon Ball inspired like character. The big round guy, if you will. So and basically, Joey says it best in the dub. He says, "Yep, we're floating on a fat guy." that I'll give. The one thing about the dub sometimes is you may not like what they cut out or how they transition things and stuff. When they can really nail it with the jokes or the humor, with the VAs, they're gold. Period. They are definitely gold. But again, like I said, that one thing Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything would not like would be complaining about, and everybody else has pointed this out too, is the transitions. Like I said, of scenes. Like here, you're going to see the sudden moment involving the Pharaoh or Aknamen or whoever, and suddenly it just cuts away. And here's, like I said, here's Yugi, Taya, Tristan, and Joey in the desert, meeting up with the girl that inspired Dark Magician Girl, meeting up with this big old round guy and everything. And then all of a sudden, boom, after they have that little scene, boom, you go right back to where we were previously, but now you're in the aftermath of what was teased or what was indicated of, about to go down. Now you're watching the aftermath because of the fact that the original version, they didn't, shy away from everything. They showed you what was about to happen. They showed you it happening, and then they showed you the aftermath. They didn't shy away. So, yeah, if there was one, like I said, if there was one thing people didn't like about the transitions in the final season, especially with Dawn of the Duel, was that they would just, out of context, or out of nowhere, if you will. But again, like I said, and I know I'm repeating myself, I do apologize. But again, when you really look at it, when you really get down to it, this, for them to go out the way they did with this final season, the way it was made, I can't think of a better way of doing so. Because basically, from the beginning, you're establishing that Yami Bakura, Zork Bakura, whatever you want to call him, is is going to be the big bad. The fact that he's able to take down Pegasus the way he did, the fact that he's able to confront Yami Merrick, and even when Yami Merrick defeats him, he's telling Yami Merrick, "Hey, I am the darkness," and Yami Merrick's confused, like, "What are you talking about?" It's like he basically doesn't get, he doesn't get what Bakura is telling him or anything like that when he says, "Oh, I am the darkness," and you can't really defeat me and all that. And like I said, this confuses Yami Merrick to no end. And then you have, and then you have Yami Bakura before that happens, put part of himself into the Millennium Puzzle to set up what's going to happen, later this season, which it does. And when you have a character that pretty much, like I said, from the beginning, takes down Pegasus, it basically laughs in the face of defeat and being sent to the shadows because he is the shadows, he is the darkness, and all Merrick is doing is empowering him even more so. And you have the same guy take a part of himself, put it into the Millennium Puzzle until the time was right, and then when the time is right, he's able to execute this master plan, this ultimate shadow game or ultimate final phase of conquering and getting revenge. It's like it's like the payoff was going to be good, and it really was. So for me, when it comes to a great antagonist, final boss, if you will, in the overall structure of Yu-Gi-Oh, to me they hit it out of the park with Bakura's character. They hit it out of the park, because of the fact that they pretty much had all this panned out and planned from the very beginning for what was going to happen, and they executed it very well. Whether it was the Japanese version or the American dubbed version, or both, whatever preference you like over the other, if not liking both, they hit it out of the park. I cannot really argue that any more than what I'm saying right now. They hit it out of the freaking park with Zork Bakura, Yami Bakura's portrayal, not just in the series but in the Dawn of the Duel portion of the finale. They really hit it out of the park, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, and everybody else enjoyed it as well. There's no doubt about it. But again, if you have not, if you have not seen Dawn of the Duel, and I'm sure a lot of you watching this have, but if you've not really fully watched it and seen exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to me saying that I'm kind of surprised at what they were able to get away with, then I highly recommend you guys check out Dawn of the Duel. Go rewatch it, see what I'm talking about, and you might even be surprised about the fact of, I didn't even know they were able to get away with that, and yet they did. And if you have not yet seen the original version, I think the original version is viewable somewhere. I think you got to just look online, you'll be able to find it. And because I'll tell you, when I watched the original version, again, big difference. Big difference when you see what was taken out from the dub but kept in with the original. Big difference. And I know some people might say, well, did you look at the manga version of this? Well, I've heard about it. Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything pointed it out. Everybody else has talked about it as well. Yeah, the manga version, again, the Japanese anime, the original anime version of it was dark. The dub version, for what they were able to get away with, was dark. But yeah, the manga version of this that they adapted from, way darker than what we saw on television. Whether it was the Japanese version or the American version, way darker and everything, to the point that you might want to slap on a TV. You might want to slap on a 14 or an MA rating on those mangas when it comes to it. When it comes to something like that, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. But yeah, they were, like I said, they were able to get away with stuff that, again, you would not expect them to be able to get away with. And on both sides of the spectrum, it just it was just surprising of what they did, really surprising. And I look at it this way too. I look at it this way as I get ready to close this down. I look at it this way: if they wanted to really, because here's the thing, we're getting close to the 25th anniversary. As far as here in the States go, we're getting close to the 25th anniversary. My suggestion would be this. My suggestion would be this: that if they really want to help celebrate Yu-Gi-Oh, and it being around for a quarter of a century, then I would basically, as we get closer to that, I would take my official Yu-Gi-Oh channel, where I have a lot of episodes on. I would talk to places like Peacock, Hulu, Tubin, Netflix. I would talk to them, and I would say, hey, and Amazon as well, and I would say, hey, how would you like to showcase the original Japanese version of the entire series as a companion to the dub version? Because I guarantee you, if they make that kind of an announcement, or make that kind of a deal happen, people will appreciate it. Because not only will they be able to have not only will they be, not what I'm trying to say is, not only will they have, just the English dub version, but they can also have the original Japanese version to go along with it, and see exactly what differences, are between the two. But yeah, honestly, with the Yu-Gi-Oh! 25th anniversary coming up, I would do that if I was, a Konami and Shonen Jump and Funimation and all of them. I would. And if not, seasons 1 to 4, I would say give me 5, give me Dawn of the Duel portion of 5. And again, like I said, watch what happens. Watch what happens. Because I guarantee you, people will appreciate, that kind of effort being done to, give them not just, the dubbed version that you got originally on Kids WB and 4Kids, but to give you the original Japan version in which it's based off of. So, to me, I think it would be a great, great move on their part to do it. Because I'll tell you this, for those that have seen the Japanese version, and again, there are ways of doing it, I'll tell you, get ready to be shocked. Okay? Get ready to be shocked, especially those that have yet to see it. If you find it, get ready to be shocked. Because it just really blows your mind. Like I said, of what they had to cut out, what they kept in. Again, like I said at the beginning here, it shows you that Dawn of the Duel was the darkest arc of the entire series. And I love the fact that, they saved that really dark portion, dark storytelling, I should say, for the finale, compared to the other seasons the other arcs and seasons that came before it. But yeah, all I can say about Dawn of the Duel, on both sides, looking at it from both sides of the viewership globe, I thought it was great. Thought it was a great way for the show to go out. Depending on which version you enjoyed, I thought it was a great way for it to go out. And that's all I can really say. But what did you guys think about Dawn of the Duel? How did you feel about it? Were you surprised about what 4Kids was able to get away with, even after toning some of it down, editing down some scenes and stuff? What did you think about it? And what did you think about the original Japanese version, if you did see that? Were you shocked and surprised of how violent it got compared to other seasons, other arcs in the show? How did you feel? How did you feel about it? Let me know down in the comments, if you will. And until next time, guys, take care. God bless. Thank you all for watching live. Really appreciate it. But again, let me know what your thoughts were. How did you feel about Dawn of the Duel? When it aired originally on WB, were you surprised about what they were able to get away with, despite their best efforts to kind of tone things down, edit down scenes and stuff? And what did you think about the Japanese version if you saw that as well? Were you surprised of how violent that got compared to other arcs that preceded it? What are your thoughts? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you all for joining me, guys. And until next time, take care. God bless. Like I said, check me out at all the places I mentioned at the beginning. BW Rose's Discussions, all your favorite audio podcast locations. Asians except for Pandora. BW Roses on Vimeo. Patreon.com/BW Roses. And at Venmo at Brian-Walmer-2. So until next time, guys, take care. God bless. Hope you all have a great Thursday evening. And until then, I am